This is Tyler Hansbrough, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We want to look now at a potential candidate to replace Elliot Cadeau. This is another one that, similar to Nate George that we just talked about, that we don't have record of Carolina connecting with, but we think is somebody worth looking at and investigating. And this is Dedan Thomas Jr. from UNLV. I specify the junior because his dad, Dedan Sr., played at UNLV from the 91-92 season through the 93-94 season. Now, you might be wondering, was that when UNLV was so hot? No, he came literally the year after their great run, and it just wasn't quite the same after that. They won the championship in 90, lost to Duke in the Final Four in 91, and then Dedan came the next year. But a great point guard in his own right, 8-9 assists a game, his junior and senior year. Crazy stuff there. But his son Dedan just finished his sophomore year at UNLV. Pat Kilby, what do you like about Mr. Dedan Thomas?
Well, here's what I really like about him. Wherever Houston would go to find their players, they would find Dedan there. Like, when you watch Houston, it's just like, golly, they're so tough and they're so scrappy, and they've just got that they've got that dog in them. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of how Dedan is, right? He's what he lacks in size, he makes up for with heart, effort, intensity, toughness. You could even compare it to the old Roy Williams saying, he's a tough little nut. That's kind of the way Dedan is. He's just real tough and scrappy, and he finds a way to get the job done. And I really like that about him. And that's not to take away from his ability as a player. He's a decent scorer. He's a good passer. He does not turn the ball over. He's just really solid, really level-headed, does a lot of great things. But I think the highlight of his game is just how tough he is, and he's about making winning plays. And I think that's a huge asset for a point guard. So there's a lot to like about him.
Yeah, I was just trying to look up his win share as you were talking there. His offensive rating is 112.3. His freshman year it was. His defensive rating is not as good as I would like, and that is certainly a concern with it. Pac, let me ask you this. You talked in segment 1 about Carolina needing size and length. That is a massive concern that the Carolina fan base has been concerned about with a 6'0" RJ Davis and a 6'1" Elliot Cadeau. Well, here we sit here talking about Dedan Thomas, who is 6'1", 170. Is that a deal breaker for you, or is it worth investigating?
I think it would be a deal breaker for me.
Okay.
And it's not to say, that he's not a great player, because he is. I just don't know that he fits what we need in such a make or break year, especially. We got to have the guy at the one. And I'm just not sure he fits that mold. I really like his game.
Yeah.
To say, hey, I'd come to Carolina and play a 6-man role or an off the bench role or a backup point guard role, then, oh yeah, I'd welcome him. But for the role that we need him to play, I think it's probably a deal breaker, just because we do need that size and that meat, like we talked about.
So is it worth even continuing to have a conversation about him then? Or, as we do it now, maybe we should think like, hey, we're looking at this guy as a potential backup point guard, but would he be willing to come and take on that role? I don't know that he would.
I don't know if he would, but you know what? Money talks sometimes. If the price is right, and I guess it depends on what his other offers were and what roles were being offered to him, then maybe that would be a possibility. But yeah, you're probably right. I don't know. He's probably looking for something a little bit bigger than what he's got right now, and so I don't know if Carolina fits that mold or not. But I think, I don't know. What do you think? Do you think it's a deal breaker? Would you take him?
I would look at him. I would definitely talk about it, but we'd have to think long and hard, because the size it's just been an issue.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be that much, like 6'3", like 2 more inches, but it's like this guy had 15.6 points a game, 4.7 assists, under 2 turnovers a game. The steal numbers aren't wild, 0.7 steals a game, not doing much, rebounding 2 rebounds a game. Is a fine 3-point shooter, 35.3%, but not high volume, just 2.6 attempts per game. His total last year was 24 of 68. So, Pac, I think it's maybe a thing for me of like, I could get past the size if you had otherworldly 3-point shooting or something like that.
Yeah. Here's
go ahead.
For you. I think, a lot of what I've been reading and what I've been hearing and different things is that a lot of Carolina's transfer portal targets or ideal targets aren't in the portal yet.
Yep.
But the more I think about that, we kind of heard that a lot last year.
I am right with you, dude. I am gun shy because of that.
Yes. So I'm kind of thinking, with Dedan, it's like we need to keep an iron in the fire, because if we miss on Nate George and Donovan Dent goes with Patino to Xavier or whatever ends up happening, we might need to have somebody like him. And I don't want anyone to misinterpret what we're saying. He is a good player. And if
absolutely
do good things for us, in an ideal world, we get more size.
Yeah.
But he is a good player.
I'm so glad you said that. I have, seen and heard a lot of that too of, but a lot of the guy, like the top big that Carolina has their eyes on is still in the portal, or still playing. And it's like, I heard that all last offseason. And look, we wound up with Jalen Washington as our starting 5. And like it's not like we couldn't see it. You and I said it all summer long, Pac, like Jalen Washington is not a starting 5 at North Carolina.
Yeah, completely agree. Well, and last year it was all Kalkbrenner's coming. He's coming from Creighton, and there was all that hype, and then he never even touched the portal.
No.
I'm with you there. I'm a little bit burnt from that. So my thought is, we're not really too good for him. Like, we need to keep an iron in the fire, because we don't know when that might become like an important player for us. Comes to that.
Man, and I would love him as a backup point guard. Like, it feels like Carolina needs like a Nate Britt, but that's so hard to do in this day and age, to have a trustworthy backup point guard that can run your team without much drop off. And that's a struggle. All right, Pat Kilby, man, great conversation today, talking about the shape of Carolina's roster, talking about Nate George, Dedan Thomas. Again, let me emphasize, neither of these guys have we heard any specific connectivity to North Carolina with. It's just guys we think we should at least be taking a look at to vet and to evaluate their potential fit for the 25-26 Tar Heels. Both of these guys, again, rising juniors, so would have 2 years of eligibility. Pac, I'm with you, and I forgot to ask. I'm assuming, based on our conversation, you feel the same about Dedan as the Nate George conversation. Donovan Dent over all of them.
Yes, absolutely.
And would you take Nate George over Dedan Thomas?
I would. Yeah, I would take Nate.
Would you take Dedan Thomas over Elliot Cadeau?
That is a tough question. They both are. They differ in ways. I think I would take on. I'm huge on even in my own coaching with my own teams. I think what wins games is not turning the ball over and being great defensively and rebounding well. And Dedan does not turn the ball over. So I think I would go with that. I think I would choose that over Cadeau.
Yeah, we often talk about gaining extra possessions through steals or offensive rebounds. Not turning the ball over is saving possession, which is equally, it's the same thing you've often talked about, Pac, of like, hey, I could score 12 points and maybe I'm an 8-point-a-game scorer and I'm 4 points above my average. You could also help your team, if you're the opposition, by holding me to 4 points, which would be 4 points. It's a similar thing. Like, keeping the ball is just as good as gaining extra possessions, right? And so that's good stuff.